Beyond the Ghostlight.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody.
Yay!
It is a fearsomely hot day, and Belle Isle has been closed since 1 o'clock. So,
Listen, for those of you out there, my wonderful gays, days, and everything in between who've heard about Bay Beach, we tried to go today. You gotta get there early, or walk, ride your bike, something like that. Take public transit, because they cut it off for cars at 1:30. It's crazy.
We are at capacity, y'all. Everybody is out. Everybody is celebrating. But yeah, like I think that is just in general everywhere I went this weekend. I just came back from the supermarket, honestly, like an hour ago, and it was packed. Everybody's getting their barbecue stuff. So I don't know. How are you guys feeling about that? Like excited? Like annoyed?
I'm a little pleased that the world is coming back to normal, kind of vaguely, but also there's still worries, and it's still the upside down out there a little.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I will say I was bummed out that there was no ice at the store that we went to. We had to go to a second store because everybody bought up all the ice, because I guess everybody had the same idea we did. Just wanted to get some sun. Just wanted to get, and then we all, of course, we had to get into the shade, get some shadow going on because the sun got real hot out there. So Speaking of shadows, we have an incredible guest with us today, the incomparable Taurian Hogan. He's working on a show right now that will be released this summer. He's going to tell us all about it. And so let's bring him on. Let's hear about it. Shall we?
Hello.
Welcome. We're hot. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty hot.
Oh yeah, I got the fan literally on me right now. So yeah.
I love it. Well, welcome, Taurian. I'm so glad you could join us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's been a minute. Last time I think I saw you, I saw you a couple months ago, but last time we worked together was Broke-ology.
Yeah, I know.
Last year.
I know.
2 years.
2 years ago. It seemed like it was last year. No, that was 2 years ago.
Oh yeah.
So
no, 2020 just didn't exist. So
yeah.
So it was last year. It was last year.
Yeah, we'll call it last year. It's fine. But that may have been our last show. But I want to hear about your current show that's going on. Can you tell us about the project that you're developing with Wayne State?
Yes. So it's the group that is put together. It's basically like the cohorts. Let me a little backstory. I'm getting my master's at Wayne right now, and I'm part of my cohort. I'm part of a cohort, and we have decided to do a summer show for kids. And the show is called Fool Me Once, the Great Trickster Championship. And we decided to do this idea, like all the tricksters throughout the world, whether it be Eshu, Kumalisa, Wampasong, all of the tricksters are coming together to compete in a competition to win water for their villages. There's a great drought all over the world, and they all want the water at the top of Trickster Mountain, which is guarded by a god named Shango, the god of thunder and lightning, who's played by me. So I'm guarding the water, and I become like this host of this competition show. And I'm like, whoever wants the water, they have to win all of the challenges that we have set up. So think like Guts, what's the other, Legends of the Hidden Temple and stuff like that. So it's kind of got like
that was precisely where I went when you said that. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. So not giving too much away, but like it's definitely going to be like an episode kind of based thing. And the first episode starts on June 19th, which is my birthday. And another cohort member, the woman Larisha Dion, who's part of my cohort. She spearheaded this thing. So it's her birthday as well. So it's like special for everybody all around. And it's Juneteenth. So.
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, we know that you've worked with kids before, and, you know, kids say the profoundest things, often seemingly at random. They'll just come out with some stuff. And so, you know, over the time that you've worked with kids, what are some of the strangest or deepest observations or revelations that you've heard from, you know, the young folks that you've worked with?
You know, the thing about kids for me, and this is almost something that I learned it more as an adult, looking at myself, looking back, but kids are very in the moment. And part of the joy of children is one of the things about acting is living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. And kids do that like the best. Because like in the process of a kid, like they're not thinking about, you know how like we're older and we like think about things and we're thinking about this, we're analyzing that. Kids just do not give a flying, you know what, they just go with it. They're like, this is how I felt at the moment. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I want to say it. And this is what I mean when I say this at this moment. And they let it all go. And I think that's where we need to get as like adults. Like we need to find our inner child again to actually let it go the way that they do.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a good point. I think you know, especially after this last year too, we've been forced on a larger scale to, no matter what your art is, what your industry is, remember to be present. Been forced to be present at times where maybe, you know, we would have preferred to be busy and doing things. And I think that's such a profound thing to remember, that especially, you know, coming back, that you're working on this project with kids, they're helping you stay present, vice versa. You're all giving each other, you know, some wisdom. What have been some of the most rewarding moments for you during this process? And maybe some of the challenging ones, you know, coming back, started, maybe breaking down some of the barriers for kids, at least over this last year they've had to overcome. What's that been like for you and for them?
Well, this year has been a big challenge because the initial idea was to actually do this live and have kids to participate in the live aspect. And because of COVID, you know, in Wayne State, they're not trying to get not trying to get anybody sick and not trying to run the risk of getting anybody sick. So we had to kind of separate that aspect. So we're filming everything and we're kind of like showing it to the kids now. But one of the things that I think kids will find interesting is like the interactive process, because there's a lot of interaction. I don't know if you guys remember like Blue's Clues, how we like do something and like, where is it at? Over there, you know, it's like things like that. Those are going to be some of the elements that we're going to attempt to incorporate, especially within like a Zoom and in a pandemic space. Those are some of the things that we're going to like incorporate, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Right. Oh, I love that. And what a wonderful way to, you know, we talk a lot of here also with like engagement. How do we find ways to make that audience participation voluntary instead of pulling some poor schmuck outside and, you know, on stage, the butt of the joke, you know, that kind of thing. And I love that, you know, when we think about theater, that's that interactive piece that we can't get from the movies or anything like that. And sort of bring kids back into that space, encourage them to play. I just think that's wonderful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to have fun. I don't even think I mentioned that. But that's another thing that I find that kids do. They genuinely just want to have fun. And I think even like Tori and I remember once, and I'll mention this a little later, of course, but we've done shows before. And I remember we were playing kids in that particular show. And there was just something about playing a kid and acting like a kid. It made that experience so much more fun. You know, when you break it down and like stop being an adult for 5 minutes and just be a kid with the big bows on their head. I think y'all had like bows on your head and stuff. It was so fun.
Yeah, it was something like that, or like pigtails or something, something to like indicate that we were youthful or something of that nature. But That's really interesting that you're bringing that up, because there's always that aspect of like taking care of your inner child, right? And we tend to neglect that inner child as we get older. And part of shadow work that we can do is to show that inner child love. And when you get the chance to make pretend or to just play, we're lucky as artists that we get to do that often as our career. But even when if it isn't your career, when you get the chance to play, there's like a healing that happens, which is phenomenal. And I absolutely love that. One wonderful way that you guys are going to be playing is through shadows and shadow puppetry. And it's definitely one of the most ancient forms of storytelling that we have out there. I mean, we've been shadows on cave walls for sure. So what is it like sharing something so primal and yet new and unique with some of those young people, or that you will be sharing with the young people? What discoveries have you all come up with on your end, trying to make it interactive and fun, both by itself and with the added challenge of Zoom?
So the way in which we went back and forth a lot of times in the process, are we doing shadow puppetry in terms of like puppets, like little things on a stick, or are we using our bodies to create shadows? Using our bodies to tell the story versus the puppetry or like things on a stick. And you'll see in the show, that's kind of how we open it. We kind of use a lot of the backstory when it comes down to like explaining what we're doing here as the Trickster Championship. We use that as a moment to show the shadow work. But it was just really interesting to we went back and forth for a minute, like, okay, are we going to do puppets or are we using our bodies? So we kind of incorporated both aspects. Some aspects we use the stick puppets, and then other aspects, there's like a character in there that is, making an elephant out of their body with their arm. And then it's like two people doing that, and they become like this elephant, and the elephant trunk that taps on someone's shoulder and then kind of merges into something else. So we just kind of it really kind of challenged us and challenged me in particular to really kind of think outside the box. And also from I don't want to say a psychological standpoint, I always start thinking about perspective. And sometimes when you see something on one side of the screen, it looks like something. And then when you see behind the screen, it's something completely different. And that's it's almost like a metaphor for life for me, because I'm I'm looking at this particular person's life and I'm seeing what's on that side of the screen. I'm seeing their shadow, but on the other side of that screen, it might be 2 people, 3 people, 4 people operating that, making it look like something else. So that it almost hit me in a psychological way. I had an aha moment one time. I'm like, oh, so it might feel funny doing it like this on this side of the screen, but it paints a beautiful picture on the other side of the screen. That was something that stood out to me as interesting. Even when I talk about it now, I'm even thinking deeper about it. That's okay.
I was about to say, that is so profound. Being uncomfortable creates beauty.
Oh yes, that's an aha moment.
Yep.
You're not growing.
Disruption. Art is disruption. So yes. It is that. So ancient things are really good because you're playing with trickster figures. And tricksters are one of those characters, those archetypes that we find all over the world. They're often, the setup is the world is created, but without the tricksters, the world is kind of just blah. Because tricksters come along and they make the world better for people. And I kind of love that you have the tricksters basically as the champions for individual villages, because that's kind of what tricksters do throughout mythology.
Yes.
Tell us a little more about your thoughts on trickster figures and trickster gods and why they are the ones that are the focus in this show.
So when we were doing the research about a lot of the tricksters, we went to but we wanted to make it very multicultural. Because even in like my experience, only like Trickster that I were thinking of were the Yoruba Trickster. Like the primary one is Eshu, who's like the Trickster. He's like a sex god and this, that, and the third. And he people love him and people hate him. And he's manipulative. He's the god of communication. So it's like he knows how to spin his words and he knows how to get what he wants. But he also gets what he wants for either good or evil, just depending on the perspective. So we did a show, the little sidebar talking about Eshu. We did a show called A Tempest, and basically it's like from The Tempest, but it's like the African Yoruba inspired version of that particular show. And one line that Eshu says in there, or someone says to him like, "Oh, you're evil. You're evil," and he's like, "Yeah, you could be my friend or you could be my enemy, just depending on where we are." You know, and I think like that's how a lot of people are. But getting back to like the show that we're in, it's good because it's like multicultural. Like Kumalisa is from Bulgaria, Anansi is from Nigeria, who's a spider trickster, and so we've got her like with these multiple arms. But there's another trickster named Wanpasong that's considered like lazy or whatever. Yeah. So it's almost like these different perspectives of these tricksters. Not everybody's evil, not everybody's mean. And it's like a lot of people think when they think like a trickster god, they think that they're up to no good. And some of the tricksters are up to very much a lot of good. So.
Right.
That's so interesting. So as you're creating these people and these characters and these tricksters, let me ask you, that's a really great one. Yes, you can't overpower a god, but you can trick them. Okay. I love that, Joey. Thank you for that comment. So when you're creating these gods and you're doing this with shadows, I'd like to ask you: is this your first time working with shadows as an aspect of a show, as like an artistic medium? And what has that working with shadows taught you about yourself as an artist and as a person?
So I want to say this might be like my second or third time. I think the first time that I've worked with shadows, and I didn't understand it at all. I didn't understand what we were doing, and it was in Color Purple when I did Color Purple with the Milwaukee Repertory Theater, and there was the opening sequence of the second act. I believe is the Dear Seeley from the letter from Nettie at the end of the first act. We find out Shug Avery finds out that tells Seeley, like, your sister's been writing to you. Look at all the letters. So the second act starts with her actually reading the letter. And the way in which our director at the time established or made this visual happen is that he had Seeley sitting on like a little stool, like kind of like down stage center, sitting on a stool reading the letters, and had sheets, like three giant sheets hanging up. Because, you know, like, in Color Purple, she's out doing laundry. She hangs the sheets on the clothespin, and it was backlit. And so everything that she was reading in the letter was being enacted behind the sheets. So there were moments, like there's a moment in there where they talk about the soldiers that are coming. And then so I had to stand there with a gun like this as one of the soldiers, and I had to, you know, like shoot the gun at one of and so we had like this whole motif going. And then there's other aspects of it where we had like the three church ladies. They were playing like the African village women. And so there was a point where Nettie says something about Seeley's children. So the three African ladies, like kind of like one moved closer and then the other ones moved back further or further and closer, vice versa, to make one look like they were growing and the others looked like they were shrinking. So it was just like really like cool stuff like that. And I was just like, okay, I never even thought about doing that, but now I can't unsee it. now I wouldn't do that any other way.
So you know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of My Name is Zora. a show that we did long time ago. And we used, for those of you out there who don't know what a scrim is a very large, thin piece of fabric that is put over the very back of a stage or sometimes the front of a stage. And it's sort of, it does what Taurian was just talking about with the small sheet, but on a very big scale. Mm-hmm. And so there were parts in that show where we walked behind that scrim to kind of create like movement in the background. Mm-hmm. And it's such an interesting experience to be an artist and be creating movement without your face.
Yes.
You know, it's literally only body language. And so your body is creating this emotion that's then being amplified on the screen 10 times your actual own size. It's just that in and of itself is a metaphor for life, you know, like the idea of what you put out there can be amplified.
Absolutely.
Tenfold, you know,
absolutely. And I want to say shout out to there's a woman in our cohort named Katie Ty who was the leader in creating the shadow puppetry. I want to give a shout out to her because, you know, she was like, she's big into it. And so she really kind of helped us with our bodies and helped us, you know, moving certain kind of ways. So shout out to her for that. I forgot to do that earlier.
That's so phenomenal. I'm curious. So, you know, we believe, even here you talk about, you know, your own process and seeing things from a whole different perspective, right? That's kind of what happens in shadow work. And I think there's something healing in that, right? We start seeing, you know, the not so subtle metaphors that are hitting you over the head during rehearsal process. And you know, you Taurian, you're already doing it. I want to keep this process moving. You all have been in some incredible shows together. And Tori, you've been in some incredible shows during your career. Could you tell us a little bit about some of those, you know, shows that really were transformative for you as an artist, right? That kind of, you saw things from a different angle coming out of the other side of that final curtain.
So every time I think about like the shows, like I've done, 3 shows come to mind, but come to mind for different reasons. Like one show is Ragtime. When we did Ragtime, I think that was like a show that really just kind of, it was so like past but present. I don't know if that makes sense at all. Like the themes in which we were talking about, we were dealing with certain things at that moment that just really impacted our show at that time, whether it be, you know, things about social justice. I think we lost a member of our department around that same time. And so that was like, it was like every single thing that we were feeling at that time, we were feeling for real. So that was like a moment, and that was the first musical that I've done. I didn't even, I was just like, I'm just going to, you know, act for the rest of my life. But I never knew that I would be a musical theater person. That was like the first, I don't know, I don't know if I can say this. That popped my cherry. Can I say that? I don't know.
You say that.
Yeah, you did. So yeah.
And so,
thanks, Rick.
Yeah, and even singing with Tori, you know, like, I mean, like that was like our first of all, I call Tori my work wife, and she hates when I say it, but guess what? Too bad. Like, we're going to be together forever in every show. So whoopsie. So no, but like that was a good moment with that. Zora was a really great show that we've done together because it allowed us to, I think I said earlier, play and just be creative. I think that was the most creative experience I had. Shout out to Aku Kadogo for directing, because when I tell you that woman pushed us and pulled us and stretched us in so many different ways, I still to this day am like, I want to do that show again. I don't care. I might be 30 pounds heavier than I used to be. I will squeeze into that costume if I need to. So like, I want to do that show again. The creativity was just it was so grand and it was so great. And the last show that sticks out of my mind, honestly, this might come as a surprise, but Full Monty, there was something about when I mentioned earlier about being in the moment, And that was the most in the moment that I've ever felt on stage. There was something about the comedy. There was something about nudity. Like I was on the stage without clothes on. And then I was like looking that the audience wasn't moving and stuff like that. And it made me like really react like, oh, I'm stripping. Y'all better dance for me or something. So it was like, it really just kind of like allowed us to play in a different way, in an adult way. And then seeing the audience respond and seeing how people laughed and seeing the joy. That is another show that we did shadow work in too, as way I forgot to tell you about. But when the big full Monty sign comes down and then it comes on and then you reveal everything and it blinds everybody, that was just an awesome experience. That's another show that I would like to do at some point.
Yeah, I know that people actually will say that. Certainly people who've performed in things like Equus, there's a very specific nude scene in there. There is something where you are literally physically nude, but you're also metaphorically so.
Yes.
You're open to the audience both literally and figuratively.
Oh, yes.
Which actually, not nudity, but like whether it's technical or metaphorical, brings up a question Joey just asked, which is the light that creates the shadow in this new show, is it part of the show? Is there an explanation within the show? Or is it just a technical way of, presenting and providing that performance? Do you make it part of the show, the fact that there are shadows?
Well, in this particular production, we just use it primarily in the beginning. Like, I think that it's something that could potentially come back up. Like we're still in the process of getting everything together. Like episode 1 is like, we just finished it and we just filmed it. So we're now working on like episodes 2, 3, and I think it's supposed to be 4 or 5 episodes. So, it could potentially come back, because we like the idea of how it works and how we're using this situation to tell the story. So I can see it actually coming back. I don't know exactly where we will put it in at. I don't know exactly how it will fit, but it was such an interesting tool to use, that it's now a thing of where can we do this if we decide to do this again. Maybe we can have another, like the ending of the whole thing could end in a shadow. Ooh, I just said that live. I don't know. I hope they're listening so we can think about it. But so we'll definitely see. But so far it was just a technical aspect to tell the story of the opening for the opening sequence.
Nice.
Very cool.
Love it. So let me ask you, let's talk a little bit about these shadows and these tricksters. I know that I don't actually know that much about tricksters in folklore. I think perhaps I know, Nick, you know a little bit more, and Luna, I know you know a little bit more about tricksters. Because I'm very curious about that and like their background. Do you?
Yeah. I had a question about that, because I think that trickster gods are you mentioned Eshu, and he's just so awesome. They are the characters in mythologies usually that humans are able to connect with, right? While they are gods, they've got that light and dark that you're talking about. The good, the bad, the ugly, everything is kind of contained, and they're usually working on different structures where, like, maybe for them, Western concepts of good or evil are not associated with light or dark, right? We're going to a different area here, and I'm curious, like, if you in your research and just finding other trickster gods for different cultures. I think you mentioned one from like the Ukraine, or Eastern Europe.
Like Bulgaria, I think.
Bulgaria, thank
Mhm.
you. Yeah. How have you found, explaining that to young kids or talking about like bringing some perspective outside of good versus bad versus evil kind of, conversations?
Mm. Um, I'm glad you asked. That's a great question because there were moments, even in researching it, where we have to kind of like really kind of think about like, will this be okay for children? Like, will this be scary? Will it be something that is too adult? Because I mean, mentioned in SU, like if you really do like in the one show that we were reading about SU about like in A Tempest, I think the SU was very sexual, like, and I played SU in that particular production, and there was there was like conversations about like him taking his penis and smacking people. And I mean, it was like, it got real. And
It's
so,
super phallic. Yeah, he's super phallic, all about it.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
No.
And then it's just like, so then it's like, this is going to be for kids. So if there is somebody like a parent or somebody that's watching this, and then they see like SU's part of the show, are they going to be like, hold up? So we really kind of had to like really kind of take some of those characteristics in these trickster gods and make them more kid friendly. Like there's another trickster named Loki. And Loki, plays with fire, so we were very conscious and very cognizant of, okay, like if we incorporate this, can we make this in a way that makes it more fantasy and we're not teaching kids to like go light something on fire and stuff like that. So I mean, it's a struggle. It's definitely one of those things, and I'm thankful that we're only in episode 1, so we can still kind of like etch some things out and move some things around if we start seeing it going in a particular direction. So even with like for instance, I'm playing Shango, and there was a moment in my costume where I'm just out here, this boom, I got like the little belt on and my red pants, the crown, the things on my wrist. But then like, Laracha kind of like pulled me aside. She was like, I'm thinking maybe we should get you something to cover up because I'm worried about the nipples, with the kids. I'm like, and I'm just full on chest, bare chest out here. And so I was just like, okay, yeah, like let's find a way to kind of like pare this down and let's not make SU phallic. One thing we kind of did was we incorporated them with certain animals. So like SU is kind of like a little bit of like a dog, Kumalisa's a fox, Anansi's a spider. There's another one called Nanabojo, who's a rabbit. And so and Loki's a horse. So we kind of like incorporated like a lot of the animal characteristics to kind of make it a little bit more kid friendly.
Wait. You have Loki as a horse?
Yes.
Oh my god. Okay, because that's one of my favorite Loki stories.
Okay.
Did you do it from the giant building Valhalla, and Loki becomes the horse to?
I don't know. I'm not sure if we're going to explore that or not. That's still something like we're still kind of like working on. Like I said, we're literally like, I just got messages about what we're doing in the show. So like when I tell you like this is like a process that we're just like creating like every single day, doing something different. We're definitely creating it. So that might be something to explore for sure.
Yeah, no, I love how tricksters are always they're always the figure that everyone like looks, all the other gods tend to look down on, but then they get in trouble and they're like, can you help us please? I kind of love that aspect, which is always there. So Loki does that, and Nancy has that.
Right.
Yeah, I love that universality, and the fact that they're that sort of holy clown kind of thing. They get to be the clown. They get to drink a little too much or be fools.
Absolutely.
But also, doing
absolutely.
that.
And there's a scene in episode 1. I promise I'm not trying to give too much away. There's a scene in episode 1 where they all kind of like the initial meeting of them, and there's some bickering back and forth between some of the characters, and I have to go silence and like silence everybody. But it's cool. Like I like where we're going so far with it, and I'm hoping we can just keep that momentum going.
Can I ask real quick, I love this. I love that you guys started with the core of an idea. Are you, and that you're giving yourself more freedom just to expand on it and make it a whole series? I mean, I would watch the heck out of this. I think it's a great concept. Like, we spend a lot of time thinking about different pantheons of characters, and they're often in our classic literature. But seeing opportunities especially for young kids to see, again, the clown stories, to your point, Nick, the stories that again are a little bit more human or have morals or fables that we kind of pass on or are able to explore because they're not perfect beings, right? And so especially for kids able to be, to walk through that process. I'm curious, did you guys, obviously you started with this idea as a play, but expanded it to a series. Was that partly just because you were finding so much material, having so many good ideas?
Well, I wish that I could say that it was that simple. Like, one of the things that we've learned, especially like in this acting course, my teacher, James Cool, actually mentioned is finding freedom in the limitations. And so with COVID, with Wayne State University, we had a lot of limitations. Like the concept started off originally like, okay, we're going to do this live. We're going to be outside. It was started off like, we're going to do this live and we're going to be the people we're going to go from school to school. Similarly to what me and Tori did with like Dream Tunnel and stuff like that. That was the initial idea we wanted to do, have a touring show of it for kids. That got taken out because of COVID. So it's like, okay, we can't do that. So then it's just like, well, can we do it, just on a stage here at Wayne? That got taken out because of COVID. So then it was like, okay, well, can we do it outside? At one point y'all were mentioning Belle Isle earlier. At one point we went down in Belle Isle. I can't remember the stage name, but there's like this stage set up down there. And we're like, this is the spot. This is what this is how it's going to be. Yeah, this is like #1 contender. And Wayne State said, no, thank you. Like that can't be a thing, not even outdoors. So, it started to kind of like, and then it was like all virtual at one point. And then it's like, okay, well, there's only so much that we could do virtually, but this is the idea. We got the green screens, we got mics just in case we have to fall back into this way. Then it was like, okay, well, we'll do it like this. And we're thinking of the show, but then I think it was Lauracia that came up with the idea of, why don't we make this like an episodic kind of thing? That way we can film, we edit, we do this, we do that, we put that together, we stream it, we send it out there to the schools, to the kids, to whatever, give them a link to like look at it and watch it. And then we'll just do that maybe like every week or so for like 5 weeks. So it became like an episodic thing because of all the limitations that we were set with. And they were allowing us to actually, thank God, once everything lifted, we're able to film in the studio at Wayne. So a lot of the things that we filmed, and I mean, that's why, of course, we have the mask on. But again, like, we're finding the freedom and the limitations. At least we can be in person. At least we're interacting. This is the first thing that we've done, interacting in person in the whole, our whole grad experience. A lot of the stuff was strictly on it. So being in person and then seeing the energy of everybody bringing to the table, it's just been just a joy. It's been quite the joy of an experience, I have to say. And I'm glad that we kind of come up with this, idea.
Beautiful.
I love that. I mean, to be honest with you, that's quite a bit of where the ideas came from. necessity is the mother of invention.
Absolutely.
Everything shut down. We wanted to create art for people, and how do we continue to create art, and how do we bring people together to collaborate and still be able to touch each other? I said that live.
Or touch each other.
Be able to influence and care for each other and all that.
Just School of Rock.
The show just became PG-13. It's fine. It's fine.
Right.
But that's where we came from. But it's interesting to think about what the world is going to be like in art when everything is fully opened up. It's starting to open up again. And so I want to know, what are you looking forward to next as an actor when things start opening up? And like, do you have any passion projects that you'd love to see?
Well, it's funny you mentioned the passion project, because there was something that I did last semester that I'm like never thought I would do. I was actually writing. Like we were part of a writing workshop with Garlia Cornelia Jones, and she kind of was like really pushing us to like write a 10-minute play. And I'm like, 10-minute play, but what? How? I'm not a writer. You know, like me, like my whole thing is like, I'm not a writer. If I write something and then I read it later and I'm like, what was I thinking? Let's throw this away. Like, that's the kind of person that I am. Even when it comes to music, I'm like, that sounded great at the moment, but I was drunk. So that's now I'm sober and now doesn't sound so anymore. And so I wrote a 10-minute play for a 10-minute play festival that I'm looking forward to at some point putting up. You know, it's a play I call it Little Water on That Flower. And basically it's like a conversation between me and my grandmother. And my grandmother passed in 2019. So it really was like one of those things where I felt like she was like speaking through me. Like, like I'm starting to, you know, type things that she would say. And she says a whole paragraph. I'm like, whoa. All right, great. So I'm looking forward to putting that up, but also looking forward to getting back on the stage. You know, I don't know if I'm allowed to say what shows are open right now or what shows I'm casting, but there is a show coming up in the fall at Wayne. It's with the Hillberry, and I'm looking forward to that. And that's going to be a really different show, like different than what you and I have done, Tori. Like this whole season, like the season that they've got planned, the shows, I'm like, oh, we're going there. It's like it's that kind of energy.
So let me ask you, that's really interesting. So like challenge, like what are some of the most challenging ways that you've been asked to go there? Because like we talked about a little bit earlier about like using your body to create art and things like that. So if you're talking about the show being different and weird and out there and challenging, without telling us a bunch about this new show that you might not be able to, let's talk in a roundabout way about what that's like, about like challenging and crazy art.
Well, I can say this about this particular show. This is one of the shows that we're going to do. And I mean, if you were to look on the website, I'm sure you would see the show. And once you see it, you're like, okay, well, we know what this is. The cast is going to have to learn every line. You never know who you're going to play that day. That's all I got to say. And I want my tea. No, I'm joking.
But no, it's fine. We've done that. We did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you have. See, so you all know. You already know what time of day it is. But also, like, what's been challenging for me as well, and I forgot to even mention this, and this goes back to talking about body work and movement. I'm in a Pilates class, and my movement class is like Pilates and yoga. Yeah, that hurts. Like over my head. Like I don't know what people thought that I can do. Like that's challenging. I am 6'3", 200 and something 30 pounds or something. That's hard to do. That's challenging.
I can imagine that being challenging.
And they're like, okay, like take your leg and just throw it over your head. I'm like, who does that? Like, why would I ever need to do? What am I doing?
Well, what if your character needs to do that? What if your character needs to throw their leg over their head?
Then I'm not gonna get that part. That character won't be doing that on that day.
You don't want to play like, you know, a 12-year-old contortionist in something, you know, with
Exactly.
flexibility and yeah.
Exactly. And we were going to do initially, I think I can say this because it's like it's not going to happen, but I think we were originally going to do Rocky Horror, and that was going to be the first show that we put on. And they asked me, you know, even in the audition, they're like, well, how do you feel about walking in heels? And that was going to be a challenge from 7'7" in heels. And the minute I fall, I'm going to shatter like, you know.
Wait a second, but I'm assuming that that's because you were going to audition for Frankenfurter?
Yeah, that was the
It would
plan.
be a great.
Be amazing.
I mean,
I don't know. The little thing scares me. I'm very clumsy already, so I can't imagine. I feel like I would fall.
you just get some kitten heels and then you build from there. It's
You go up to the lab and see what's on the slab. It'll be great.
Oh
This-
God!
This has been phenomenal. I just want to say thank you for joining us. First of all, before we start doing wrap ups, I want to say thank you for joining us
Thank you.
and sharing with us some of your art. Appreciate
Amen.
that.
Thank you. And there's also things I want to just say real quick. There a lot of social political work too. You know, and you and I know, Toria, being in Wayne State, a lot of times it's a little touchy to kind of like go racial or talk about the race and racial relations, unless you're doing like a show like Ragtime. But I definitely think that Wayne State is some of the shows that we're going to do are really going to like challenge the way we view like race and race relations in America. And I think that that's going to be major coming up in the fall.
Really, that's
Phenomenal.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So that honestly, that actually brings to mind a question that I didn't get a chance to fully flesh out, but that's helped me do that. So as an artist in Detroit specifically, as a professional artist in Detroit, so I know we're talking about Wayne State, but you've done a lot of professional shows as well in Detroit. What are some of the strengths you think that we have as a conglomerate, as Detroit artists, as Detroit theater artists, and what are some of the weaknesses you would say that you've experienced?
Some of the strengths, a lot of times being like a Detroit-based artist, you see a lot. You experience a lot of the ups and the downs, so that when you approach the downs in the real world, so to speak, it doesn't feel foreign. So you don't. At least from my perspective, I don't beat up on myself so much anymore. I realize that not getting the job is part of the job. And a lot of times you're playing with house money and you go in and that almost brings the nerves down because you are just able to live truthfully under the imaginary circumstance and be in the moment at that moment. Even like, going from here and moving to the Milwaukee Rep, like I felt comfortable being there because I know that if I don't get this part, it's not the end of the world. I just have to work harder and try harder and come back and do better. And one of the weaknesses a lot of times I think is sometimes being pigeonholed into that. I'm very proud of being from Detroit, and I feel like when you're outside of Detroit and you go to certain places, they don't take you seriously unless you say you're from New York or Chicago. And like, and I kind of had to. I'm not going to point anybody. I'm not going to call any names of anybody, but there was a few actors and directors that kind of thought it best to not these actors come from, oh, we have actors here from New York and Chicago. Nobody mentioned the actors that were from Georgia. Nobody mentioned the actors that were from Detroit. It was almost one of those things where it might have made them think less of the production if I did mention it. So that kind of was one of those things where it's like, but then again, at the same time, you're like, okay, I'm from Motown, like they're like, oh, Motown, okay, so you must be able to, sing and dance, and it's like, okay, yeah, so it's like a double-edged sword. But I do think like there's definitely some downsides to being a local artist.
Yeah. So one of the things, we have a huge talent pool here, and everybody loves theater. And often when we have a guest, well, because we all love horror, and that's why there's a lot of the imagery, we ask about what made people love horror. But here, I think a more interesting question, certainly on topic more, is just what was it that first made you fall in love with theater in general? What thing, because we're talking about encouraging it in kids.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously all of us started fairly young in theater, and it was either we did a role or we went to see a show and then we saw an audition, or, what was it that when you were a little lad, what was it that you saw or made you fall in love with the idea of theater?
So interestingly enough, I didn't really start to like theater and acting. Like, I've always liked movies. I've always liked the entertainment aspect or the aspect of entertaining, whether it's been watching Michael Jackson, singing, dancing, I've always been a part of that. Then the Disney thing kind of came around, and then like being animated and watching Pinocchio and stuff like that. That is what made me like fall in love with like the craft itself. Theater specifically, I actually didn't really get into until the first time that I'd ever done something theatrical was the last day of high school. Okay. I was in a class that it was my teacher, Miss Meisner, had a class, and it was acting. It was like for like a little like, oh, you need 1 credit to add. So it was just like a little something. It wasn't taken very seriously. We didn't really have put on plays and productions. We were doing things like improv and putting on the hits and stuff like that. Those are the kind of like things that we did. And like the first time I've ever like performed, I guess you could say this is the first time I performed in front of people other than my family. My teacher was calling names, and so she was just like, we're just gonna call these names, and if I call your name, come on down because you won $1 million. And so she calls my name, and then I just lose it. Like, I get up, I'm on the floor, I'm rolling around, and seeing the response of like the audience, the fact that I could like make somebody laugh by just being silly and just acting out and just playing, and I'm just like just having the best time ever. And I was hooked at that moment. I was hooked because I was like, oh, I'm getting a response from them. They're loving it. I'm loving it. I'm loving too. I'm enjoying, making them laugh. And that was a moment to me where I was like, okay, I think I can do this. Getting into college was a little scary because you were amongst people that read plays before and knew plays. Like, I'm sure Tori knew tons more plays than I did when I got in. I'm just like, Tori probably did all kind of plays. She's like reading Shakespeare all perfectly and beautifully. I know nothing about it. I don't know how to do any of these words or what any of it mean. So that was the scary part. But like getting involved in it, we started with Dream Tunnel, and that was like a smaller show to do, and that kind of like got me like, okay, I can learn some lines and I can interact with the audience. I can talk to the. It's like that. I could do storytelling. And that's where I was like, okay, I think I love this. I think I love this. And then I went through a phase where I was like, okay, I don't know if I want to do this. But then like being in Color Purple, I saw like a lot of people of color like in there and doing it and actually doing it professionally. And they knew how to do this. They knew what to go here. They knew where to audition, how, when, why, where to do your headshots, how to do it. And so it was a whole business aspect of it that I saw people who looked like me doing it. And that made me, that reinvigorated, reintroduced, recharged my love for theater and the art form itself.
Beautiful.
I'm sorry, I'm a little long-winded, guys. I hate to be like that.
No. This is beautiful. That's why we have this thing. We're just sitting in the shadows of beyond the Ghostlight, and we're just talking about the shadows, and So yes.
Look, after last year, we can't apologize for our passions anymore, right? That's the window after last year. We can't apologize for being enthusiastic. So I just want to really quickly say thank you for sharing some really beautiful creative moments. Like, you got my recharge is going listening to you talk about.
Thank you.
Figuring it out with these babies and figuring out a way to bring something meaningful to them, something different than what they've seen and what they probably associate with theater. And I love that you all are just are on that fire. So just thank you for this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. And if any also young Black kids, and I wanted to let them know too that I want to be an example so that they can do it because they've seen me do it, vice versa. And if I can touch, or reach out or really inspire kids in that aspect, that would be super awesome.
That's the thing, right? That's the dream, right? Is that if we can, both for kids and adults, if we can inspire and reach out and give people permission to be themselves.
Absolutely.
That's the dream. That's the goal. That's what art is there for, right? To hold up a mirror and to give us the strength and the permission to be true to who we are.
Yes, give us the permission. Amen to that. Yes.
Love that.
No, guys. I think it's time to say good evening and adieu to all of you. I want to do a big shout out to all of you in the comments. Again, Joey, you are an OG gangster fan. We love seeing you every time. Bridget, we love seeing you out there. If I don't mention your name, it's because I can't see your name. But make sure you comment next time in the chat so we can talk, we can have a conversation. And one quick little reminder announcement, keep an eye out, guys, over the summer when you're downtown. Because there might be some pop-up theater happening in and around the downtown area in relation to Gratuity Not Included. More on that will be released soon, so stay tuned. Make sure to follow us at the Ibis Facebook page. Follow us at Shadow of the Ibis on Instagram, or pay attention to our shadowoftheibis.com website for more announcements on our guerrilla theater. Get some sun, get some entertainment, get some city in. It'll be lovely. It'll be wonderful. And we can't wait to see you guys out there. So thank you for joining us on Beyond the Ghostlight. And we'll see you next time.
Thank y'all. Thank you, Victoria and Luna. Thank y'all.
Bye, y'all. Thanks, Taurian.
Beyond the Ghostlight.